Well, 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 people. What do we have here? The most critically acclaimed gaming franchise in all of gaming, and my favorite gaming franchise in all of gaming. When it comes to gaming, there may be individual titles that are greater or equal to any one Legend of Zelda game, but as a whole, as a franchise, from Alpha to Omega, from beginning to end to start to present, there is no better gaming franchise that is more consistently great than The Legend of Zelda. Created by Shigeru Miyamoto, Takashi Tezuka, and composed by the legendary Koji Kondo. There really isn't anything I can tell you about this franchise that you've already never heard. Because this franchise is it. This franchise is top tier. This franchise is God tier. This franchise is at the highest peak of the mountain any gaming franchise can be at. Started with the first game, The Legend of Zelda, on the regular Nintendo. That's where it all started for me. Still on the cart, still an epic game, still a very great place to start. Followed up by The Adventure of Link. Not my favorite Legend of Zelda game, not even a very good game in my estimation. Very difficult, very different. Just not really my cup of tea. But back then, they're probably experimenting on what they wanted the franchise to be and to evolve into. Thankfully, in the third game, A Link to the Past, which is one of my favorite games of the franchise, they returned back to the top-down format. And A Link to the Past is just a magnificent game. If you've never played it, then you need to find a way, you need to find time, you need to play the game. Next up, we have Link's Awakening, the debut onto the handheld, and what a debut that was. Another very amazing, high-quality game, which shows that whether it's for the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, or even a handheld, Nintendo can put out a high-quality Zelda game. And then we have one of my favorites, the granddaddy of them all, the introduction into 3D, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. And Ocarina of Time, wow. Got the game day one, probably played it for 12 hours as soon as I got it. An absolutely amazing, revolutionary, magnificent title that changed the name of the game forever. And following that, we had Majora's Mask, which some people say is better than Ocarina of Time. I can objectively see why, but maybe it's a nostalgia. Maybe to me, it's the fact that Ocarina of Time was the first 3D game, but I do like Ocarina of Time better. I'm not really a big fan of the whole moon is coming to destroy the earth over and over and time travel, this, that, and the third. Next up after that, we had Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages, which are two very high quality games on the Game Boy Color. A worthy follow-up to Link's Awakening. No problem with these games. I heard there was supposed to be a third. The third never came. Game is helped out in part by Capcom, so interesting to see that Capcom could actually have their hands in a Zelda game. Who knew? Following that, we have Four Swords. Four Swords I don't own because to me it's not really a mainline Zelda game. So I moved on to Wind Waker. And Wind Waker is a polarizing title because a lot of people wanted that adult theme, that realistic theme, that space world theme. And what did we get? We got a cartoon Toon Link. It made a lot of people mad. Was the game good? Yes. Is the game probably looked back on more favorably now than when it was released when we wanted a realistic Zelda? Absolutely. My really only complaint about this game was the overabundance in sailing. The Minish Cap. Once again, another high quality handheld game. Nintendo continues to step it up handheld after handheld after handheld. Primarily with, the same limitations and top-down bases, no 3D, but again, they get it done. And after the Minish Cap, what do we have? We had Twilight Princess, and Twilight Princess, I only played it on the Wii. A lot of people said it was better on the GameCube, but I played on the Wii. Decent game, not exactly my favorite game. That could possibly be attributed to the Wii's controls, and I'm not exactly a big fan of the waggle controls. Next up, we had Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, 2 games on the DS, and these games were both kind of, I don't know, maybe I was going through Zelda burnout after Twilight Princess, but I kind of didn't really care for either of these games when they really came out. I played them much later after they came out. And Skyward Sword, well, Skyward Sword was another great game, another top tier game, another worthy game that was just supremely critically received at the end of the Wii generation. Unfortunately, we do have frauds in the community that actually go to gaming award shows to praise this game, but yet have never even finished this game. Imagine that. Next up, we have A Link Between Worlds, which a lot of people call the sequel to A Link to the Past. I don't know if it technically is. Honestly, I forgot. I know it started out that way, but didn't finish out that way. Look, I got the 3DS Collector's Edition of it that came with the Link to the Past, or I'm sorry, A Link Between Worlds Gold 3DS, and all I can say is that this game was amazing. Going between the worlds, flattening on the walls and everything like that, game is top tier. I'm actually really conflicted on what I like better in Zelda, 3D or top down. And then we have, rounding it out, Breath of the Wild. And Breath of the Wild is, to me, a polarizing game. Because this game could have been an all-time great game if it had a story, if it had characters, if it had some sort of reoccurring main antagonist, but it had neither of those. It literally was an empty sandbox of Zelda. You had a ridiculously amazing world where you could be insanely creative, you could be innovative, you could do tons of things, you could fight things in tons of ways, but there just was no story. There were no characters. There really wasn't any villains. It was defeat 4 Megazords, fight 4 generic Ganon bosses of a different element, and then fight a giant cloud that was nearly impossible to lose against. But from the cooking, to the equipment, to the armors, to the horses, to everything else you could put into a Zelda game, it was top tier. It just was not supplemented with anything of any real tangible significance. You were doing things literally just to go out there and have fun, as opposed to progressing a storyline narrative. And that was my problem with Breath of the Wild. If they create a new Zelda game, they have characters, solid characters, a solid story, a solid foundation, a reoccurring threat, as opposed to do this to get to the end game, they could quite possibly have one of the best games of all time. See, my other issue is this, people. I keep waiting on a game to match or equal The Witcher 3. I thought it was going to happen with Xenoblade 2. Actually, I hoped it would happen. I knew it wasn't going to happen. And I hoped it would happen with Breath of the Wild. But The Witcher 3 is just so far head and shoulders above every other game. Maybe I'm just hoping to hope. But this, people, is my complete collection of the mainline Legend of Zelda titles. Except no substitutes, except no CDI games. But this is it. This is what I call the greatest franchise in all of gaming.